I've been to a lot of funerals of kids. Over 50 kids have died from gun violence since I've been superintendent. RPS students.
Oh my God.
And probably 2-3 times that number have been shot. And that, fortunately, it has been, knock on wood, a little bit better this year, but still, that's just horrific.
Jason Kamras wanted to make it 5 years as Richmond's school superintendent when he took over the RPS top job in 2018. 8 years later, he's still going strong. But it's not all been smooth sailing trying to fix the problems that have long plagued the historically troubled school system. Today, he talks about the struggles and successes, how he's dealing with major budget issues and community violence, and where he wants the school system to be in the next few years.
Superintendent, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I think this is the first time I've ever really met you face to face.
Yeah.
I've been around, in and around Richmond a long. You are a real person. Yeah, you do exist. I've been around Richmond a long time. I've done a lot of reporting on RPS throughout the years. You've been here for 9 years, I think, right? Is that accurate?
8.
Okay,
but,
coming up.
It feels like
Listen,
longer,
you're the math teacher. Like I said,
yeah.
I told you I told you a couple minutes ago, math is not my strong suit. You've been here 8 years, and how do you see things currently going? I mean, in your time at RPS, do you think we're on an upswing? Do you think things are going in a good direction?
I do think they are on an upswing. It's been a hard 8 years, no doubt. Just about a year and a half into my time here in Richmond, we had the pandemic, and that threw us all for a loop. But yeah, if you look at all the major academic indicators, things are going up. So last year's seniors hit an 80% graduation rate, which is the highest in about a decade. And our Black students and economically disadvantaged students hit highest rates in 20 years. We've also seen back-to-back years in growth in our SOL scores, math, reading, science, history. And our littlest learners, K1, 2, they are improving in reading 5 times as fast as their peers across the state. So we still have a long way to go. Let me be absolutely clear. We are very far from where we need to be, but we are most definitely on the rise.
When you say that, I mean, I assume, I was looking at the SOL scores, and I was looking at reading and math, and it looks like 50% passed the reading, 49% passed the math. The statewide pass rate is 72%. So I assume when you say we have a ways to go, that's what I'm talking about. Discussing. Yeah.
Actually, we're now, those were, I think that's a year old data. So we're now at 53 in reading. The previous year we were 50, previous year 47. So making our way up. Obviously, that's way too low, right? That still means about almost 1 out of 2. Half of kids aren't reading proficiently, and the state average, as you noted, is in the 70s. But we are accelerating growth, and so I think we're going to see a big bump this year. But of course, look, until we get at least above the state average, we are very far from where we need to be.
What are the challenges that make those growth sort of smaller, more incremental? I mean, what are things that you're up against to get those numbers higher?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, many of our young people here in RPS are facing a lot of challenges in their lives, and those challenges impact learning. We know that growing up in poverty means that you are less likely to have the same opportunities, experiences, and access that impacts learning over time. So that's a huge factor. We don't make any excuse for that. We love and embrace every single student for who they are, but it would also be, it wouldn't make any sense for us to deny that reality at the same time. It's also a challenge to attract teachers. That has been an issue across the country really after the pandemic, but it has always been a particular challenge in high poverty school systems because on average, it is more challenging to teach in a place like Richmond than in other places. Again, given the challenges that young people bring with them to school every day. And but that's also why I'm so impressed and proud of our teachers for the work that they are doing. And then recently, all of the federal immigration policy has impacted our growing Latino population. I don't know if folks realize this, but we're almost a quarter Latino now. And so that has impacted kids, it created a sense of fear and anxiety, impacted attendance, impacted enrollment. So that's a whole nother new factor that we're grappling with.
Is that based on real metrics that you have, that Latino students have left the system or disenrolled because of the fact that there is this fear that they're kind of...
Yeah, we are beginning to see that in the data. I also know anecdotally from talking to principals on the South Side, where most of our Latino students are, who have shared with me, 16 families. This was a real conversation I had right before break, have unenrolled because they're just worried that they'll get deported and their kids will come home and no one will be there. And these are American citizens, by the way.
That's unfortunate that the children are going to be, missing out on education because of that fear. That's a shame. So those are the obstacles. I know Monday night was a particularly heated night for you. This past Monday was a meeting to discuss the budget. And sort of your suggestion is one that not everyone was thrilled to hear, which is that teachers and staff's pay will be paused in terms of raises, right? It'll be frozen. And then some healthcare costs are going up and some jobs are being eliminated. So tell me why that's necessary. Tell me what your thinking is there.
Yeah, so first I think it's important for the public to understand that Richmond Public Schools, the school board, we have no ability to raise revenue on our own. So in other states, school boards can levy taxes or bonds. We cannot. So we rely on funding from the city, the state, and a little bit from the federal government. The city primarily uses property tax revenue to fund RPS. And as your listeners probably know from having the mayor on, the city is freezing the property tax assessment next year to realign the budget schedule. That's great if you are a homeowner, property owner, as I am here in Richmond. It's not so great for RPS because it means the funding pot is not getting a lot bigger. So that creates a challenge for us on the city revenue side. And then on the state side, one of the things the current assembly is grappling with is filling the Medicaid hole that was created by the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which moved Medicaid costs from the federal government onto the states. So again, on the state side, things are a little bit tighter than we would like as well. So in short, we're predicting about $9 million in additional revenue, but at the same time, our costs are going up by about $31 million.
Wow.
And that's because of very prosaic things like inflation. Everything just gets more expensive. It's also because we have committed to and want to give raises and other benefit increases. It's also because we have some one-time funding sources that are going away. And so that creates a hole. So, look, out of fiscal responsibility, I proposed a budget to the school board that closes that gap, and it does so by making some of those reductions. Let me be clear. I don't want to make those cuts. I don't want to make those reductions, but I felt it was important to give the school board a roadmap for what seemed likely at the time to be the situation. Since then, it looks a little bit better for us. There are bills going through the General Assembly that might give us a lot more money, and if that's the case, we'll be able to put a lot of things back into the budget. And so that's what I'm hopeful for and advocating for behind the scenes as much as possible.
But sometimes you're a math guy, right? Like you have to just do the numbers, and if it doesn't add up, it doesn't add up. Yeah,
no, that's true. And so that's why, again, when we're facing things like a reduction in force, I felt it was really important. If that's going to happen, I would rather people know now than find out in May or June when their contracts are about to expire. So at minimum, they can prepare. Now, I hope we don't have to go down that path, but if we do, they've had the time to make other arrangements.
Yeah, I mean, I think Richmond spends per student, a year, over $20,000 a year.
That's right.
Right? And that's particularly high in the region. I mean, granted, the circumstances are not the same in suburban school districts like Henrico and Chesterfield, but I think, Chesterfield is at like 10, Henrico's at like 14. I mean, Richmond spends a lot per student.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And with good reason. So let's break this down because this is a question that I get a lot. So our poverty rate in Richmond Public Schools is twice the rate of Henrico's and 3 times the rate of Chesterfield's. Per capita, we have 3 times the number of unhoused families. Per capita, we have a much higher level of kids who do not get regular meals. All of those things have profound impacts on the cost of education for children. And so that means we need additional supports for a lot of the kids in RPS. And oftentimes those are additional people, staff, and that's expensive.
Yeah.
And every bit of research out there, this is not just Jason saying this, is clear that it is exponentially more expensive to provide a quality education for students growing up in poverty. And so that is why. Now, the public should rightly ask, well, what are we getting for the money? And what I've tried to demonstrate is, well, we're getting results, right? Highest graduation rate for our Black students and economically disadvantaged students in 20 years. Rapidly growing reading rates, improvement in all SOLs. We've got to do more, of course. I'm the first one to say it, as we talked about at the top. But those dollars are making a difference for kids.
Yeah. I imagine, just the wraparound services, making sure that if children don't have any support at home, it takes a lot more effort, a lot more people,
imagine you're a 10-year-old in a single-parent home. Maybe mom works 2 jobs, including the night shift, so you get very little time with mom. Mom isn't making a lot of money, so food is sparse in your home. The heat may be out periodically. Maybe you're undocumented. Maybe you're not undocumented, but you have a name that sounds like you're from another country, and so you're fearful about ICE popping into the neighborhood and taking mom away. Maybe there's some community violence that you've experienced or seen. And then you show up, we expect you to be there and ready to learn math.
Right.
And let me be clear, I'm not lowering the bar for that young person. We're going to teach them math and we're going to teach them reading. But we also have to do a lot more to address their needs to be able to do that. And that's why it's expensive.
Sure. It makes sense. In terms of, you mentioned homelessness. I wonder if you have a number on that. Do you know how many students in the Richmond public school system are homeless?
Almost 1,000 of our 22,000 students experience homelessness at some point during the school year. That means they are living in cars, living in hotels, living in a family member's home. Think about that, 1,000 kids.
So sad, so sad. How do you mitigate those circumstances? I mean, obviously having lunch, having breakfast, having teachers who try their best to relate. But I mean, I have 2 children that I get to school every day, and I know the struggle just to get 2 healthy, happy kids out the door. It's not easy. No,
yeah,
and they have to be in the right frame of mind. They have to be, even with all the right circumstances, it's still a struggle. So I can't imagine for the teachers how they do they have training to deal with those circumstances?
There is training. We also have a lot of wraparound supports, right? You ask, what is the expenditure? We have partners that cost, things like communities and schools, great partner that add staff to every one of our schools to help provide wraparound supports. We have more social workers, more counselors than the state requires because we have that greater need. They provide those supports. But we also do things like we have something called the Love Market, which is literally a mini grocery store that is has fresh produce and all kinds of other resources from Feedmore, our partner, and many others. Families can come, get whatever that they need. But we run all kinds of programs like that to support those families. We also have a whole fleet of vans in addition to our buses, where we have people who will go and pick kids up who might be staying at hotels, and they need to get across town to go to the school where they were before they became homeless. And so we do all of those things.
I mean, is that something that's happening regularly?
Absolutely. Every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that everyone understands that. You know what I mean? That it's, it's such a hard thing to process that they're, children living in hotels that the school has to send vans to pick up to go.
Yeah. And let me be clear, this is not the Marriott downtown when I say hotels.
Right.
These are places that I think most folks would not want to spend the night, but it's all that can be afforded.
Well, that's a sad reality, and I am in some ways just at least they have school. At least they have school.
Yeah, which is why to bring up the last few weeks, why I hate closing schools so much, because we are, of course, the largest provider of education in the city, but we're also one of the largest providers of food, of heat.
So when schools close for a week,
exactly,
it's got a lot of trickle-down effects.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is a good point to hit pause for a second. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Richmond Public Schools with the superintendent. We'll be right back.
If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, just a few minutes ago, we were discussing these vans that the district uses to pick up students who maybe are staying somewhere temporarily, like a hotel, and bring them to school. And as you mentioned, one of the reasons for that is to try and limit chronic absenteeism. And the definition of chronic absenteeism, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is 18 days or more of the 10% of the school year.
10% of the school
10% of the school year. Yeah. And what percent of RPS would fall in the chronic absenteeism?
Yeah, right now it's at about 20%, which of course is higher than we want it to be. We'd like to get as close to zero as possible. But let's recall, coming out of the pandemic, we were close to 40%. So we've been chipping away at that year after year. We have these fabulous people at RPS called family liaisons, and their whole job is to connect with families and to help problem solve the underlying reasons why kids might be absent. And, just calling people and telling them to come to school doesn't do the trick. So these folks go out, they meet with families, they talk to the kids, try to understand what's happening. Sometimes it's a transportation issue, but sometimes it's a health issue. Mom or grandma who's head of the household may be ill, and so a high school student needs to actually stay home to help out. Or there is a baby in the house, and so an older student needs to stay and watch the baby. Or there is a homelessness issue. Or there's community violence, and kids are scared to walk to the bus stop. And on and on. And so in each of those cases, they try to figure out what's a possible solution. Family needs childcare. Okay, let's figure out, is there a community provider that can help out with that? Or community violence. So we have folks who will walk with the kids to school, or do a walking school bus, which is basically you walk with a group of kids and they pick up more kids and then they walk their way to school. So we try to problem solve as best as we can.
That takes a lot of work. I mean, this is all outside of the classroom. You know, I mean, it's just, I don't know that the picture of poverty is fully understood, you know, by most people here.
Yeah, I don't think it is. You know, again,
was it clear to you when you started, or did it become clear over time?
Well, you know, I've been in education for a long time. I spent most of my career in Washington, D.C., teaching in a very high poverty school. So the underlying issues have been familiar to me for some time. But I am constantly surprised by just how devastating growing up in poverty can be. Just all the little ways that it makes life so much more difficult. And so, again, this is not an excuse. I want to be super clear. We're going to hold all kids to the same standard. Just because you grow up in poverty doesn't mean you can't be successful. But it also means that the deck is stacked against you, and we have to move heaven and earth to make sure that you get what you need.
What is distinguishing about Richmond's situation, like when you compare it to, say, D.C.? Is there something that stands out as being, you know, different? I mean, I guess you're in charge, so that's different. That probably weighs on you in a different way. I mean,
I think in terms of the school system, it's very similar, actually. Demographically, it's very similar. Many of the challenges are very similar. It's just smaller. But, you know, like Richmond, D.C. has large pockets of concentrated poverty, and that impacts the school system. There's also a growing Latino population, and that, of course, has an impact, particularly given recent federal policy. So in many ways, it's similar. I will say some very different things. D.C. has more resources. So 20 years ago or so, put in place a capital improvement plan. So now the D.C. Public Schools has some of the nicest school buildings in the country.
Yeah, Richmond cannot claim that.
No, we cannot.
Sure.
And, you know, the average age of our schools is about 60 years. The average age of our Title I schools is about 80 years.
Yeah.
We have, just in the current year, over $40 million in maintenance needs, and we have a budget of $2.5 million for that.
So roughly $38 million are not getting done.
Yeah, and just to help folks kind of make a sense of these numbers, to replace one roof this year is costing us $1.7 million.
Oh my gosh.
And again, our budget is $2.5.
Yeah.
So, look, my heart breaks when I see stories of a leaking roof or a crack in the wall or an HVAC system that's failing. And teachers email me or parents, and trust me, we try to stretch every penny as far as we can, but it only goes so far.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you've got to, if the teacher, which is really sort of the most valuable instrument of the whole operation, in my opinion, I mean, if you can't keep those, like the crack in the wall is not going to be, you know, I mean, that doesn't matter, right? You got to.
And I mean, you know, imagine anyone listening, you go to work and you don't have a functioning air or heat system, or there's a crack or a leak. That's really frustrating.
Yeah, it's a difficult environment.
Shouldn't be the case.
Right. And I'm sure it's a difficult environment to recruit into. I'm sure getting teachers to stay retention has to be troubling.
Yeah, it is hard. I will say we have been ticking up in retention, which is great to see, and I think that's in part because we've been able to put a lot more money into teacher salaries. Of course, we want to continue that, but since I've arrived, we've gone from an average of about $50,000 to an average of over $70,000. So huge increases. Of course, I would love to make teachers rich, so a lot more to do on that front. But as you noted, there are lots of things beyond pay that matter, like your physical working conditions and having the necessary supports to help kids who are going through lots in their lives. So we try to tackle all of those things to the best of our ability.
How's your relationship with the union?
Yeah, so honestly, I have a a very strong relationship with the union president. We don't agree all the time, and that is okay.
I think that's standard, right? You're not
but
supposed to.
There's a lot of respect. I will say President Andrea Bryant is a fabulous teacher and is deeply committed to RPS, and I think very, very highly of her. And I appreciate the union's advocacy. Look, I was a Washington Teachers
You
Union
were in
member.
it at one
Yeah,
point.
of course.
Yeah.
And look, we all have the same aim, which is better funding, taking care of our kids, taking care of our teachers. Sometimes we have different ideas about how to go about doing that, but we're all united in what we're trying to achieve. And I applaud the union for their advocacy. It's helpful. It helps bring to light some of the challenges that we face. The push that I've always said to anyone is to, as you advocate, also confront the reality of the here and now. I would love to have put forth a budget that did not contemplate any reductions, but I don't have that luxury because my responsibility is to ensure that we're solvent. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that means making really unpopular recommendations, and so that's where we are at the moment.
What about the school board? How's that relationship?
It's been fabulous. I have to shout out Chair Fernandez. She's done a really wonderful job now in her second year as chair. It's a really wonderful group. All 9 of them bring such different experiences to the table. We are working together as a great team, and I'm just so grateful for their partnership and collaboration. Again, we don't always all agree, the 10 of us, right? Nor should we. That wouldn't make any sense. But I feel an enormous sense of partnership, which is really wonderful. And we are all 100% committed to doing the very best we can for Richmond's kids. And that's all you could ask for.
As you were mentioning sort of, the upswing, the graduation rate, the test scores, teacher retention, all of these are measured results, but small, right? I mean, they're,
sure.
And I imagine it's difficult to even move the needle, 3 percentage points, 4 percentage points. It's year over year. It's got to be tricky to do that. Does it ever get frustrating? Do you ever want to just say, like, why can't we get a 10%? Like, why? I mean, or are you just sort of, have you set your mind to, we're going to make these gains and every gain is valuable? I'm not going to get upset with it. I mean, I just know myself. It's like, gosh, I'm only, if I'm trying to lose weight and I'm like, I lost 1 pound in 2 weeks, like, this is not work. You know what I mean? It is working, but it's just working slowly, it seems.
Yeah. Look, in my core, I am impatient and want things to change fast. Not just because, it's our goal, but because it makes a real difference for kids. And so, I do get frustrated, but I'm also, I have become humble over time at the face of the challenge and understand that when you actually look at turnarounds in terms of urban school systems, putting up plus 3% for many years in a row is how it's typically done. You don't really usually see plus 10. If you see plus 10, plus
Something's
15,
fishy.
plus 20, you might want to scratch your head for a second. And so it's about...
I want to find a numbers guy to get a deeper dive on that.
So it's about sustained growth. Of course, I want us to accelerate, and I do think we will begin to accelerate even more because this builds on itself over time, but... you put up 3, 4, 5% for multiple years, and suddenly you're talking about, over time, you're talking about plus 20, plus 25. And so I have been blessed with time, which I think is necessary. We didn't get where we are in 1 year, and we won't turn it around in 1 year.
So you're feeling encouraged by the results, not frustrated, not...
I am encouraged and continually impatient.
Yeah. Yes. You want it to happen today. I want it for you because I do think it has been part of, Richmond's school system since I started reporting here has just always struggled to get, traction in terms of performance and scores, and obviously the circumstances play a huge role, as you've described.
Yes.
But I think it would drastically change a community to be able to, feel like their public school system was, at a state level, was on solid footing, was, being able to keep teachers. So that I hope too for you as quickly as possible.
I appreciate that, and it takes time, but I do think we're beginning to change public perception. I'll just share one data point. When you look at the reading performance of English learners, used to be called ESL students, we call them English learners now, we actually are above the state average. And we're actually above their peers in the counties.
Why is that?
Because I think we're doing a good job, and by we I mean our teachers.
Yeah.
We've invested a lot in that student population. Let me be clear. Overall, none of us is doing an amazing job.
Right.
We still have a long way to go across the state. But I do think it's surprising when I tell people that statistic, because they assume that RPS is always below the state, is always below the counties. And I have enormous love and respect and admiration for my colleagues in the counties. I only bring this up because we are beginning to have data points that surprise people in a good way. And I see it as part of my job to shout that so that the perception changes, because I do want people to understand that the money matters, the effort matters, the time and energy matters, everything that the city is doing matters. And so, it's a long journey, but we are most definitely on the rise.
I do remember when you say I want to shout it out. I remember the press conference when you were celebrating the 80%.
Yes.
And you said something similar then about, I feel like I just want people to know this. Like, I want them to hear it, because, that I do think there is sort of a negative cloud around it. And I think, there's a lot of breakthrough moments that probably don't get visible.
Absolutely.
They don't get seen.
Yeah.
You're much more likely to hear about the story on the news that, was bad than the one that was good.
Indeed. I was told once by, I don't know if it was an editor or a reporter, they said, look, news is when the uncommon happens, right? Which is why a car crash or whatever, a fire, right? And what I've said back is, well, RPS crushing it is relatively uncommon for the last few years, so you better cover it.
It's a solid point.
Yeah.
It's a solid point. I'll take that as a former reporter. I'll take that. That is a good spot to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about your future in just a second.
If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, tell me this. 8 years in, what has surprised you the most? What were you unprepared for that has now sort of enlightened you?
Well, I think I was most unprepared for the pandemic, as we all were. It was just so just disorienting in every possible way, right? If you had told me you're going to be superintendent for a school system that's going to be 100% virtual for an entire year, I mean, I would have thought you were crazy.
Right.
And remember, when the pandemic hit, we had maybe 2,000 laptops. We got 22,000 kids. Right. So it was just a mad scramble to, keep some semblance of learning going on. And we know, despite everyone's very best efforts, that kids just lost huge ground.
Yes.
So I'd say that's certainly one.
Well, and that should encourage you with your statistics even more, because that was quite a setback.
Yeah, it was a huge. I mean, we
attendance and all of the
all
things.
Of it,
all the
and
things,
we were hit harder, both academically and from a health perspective by COVID. the Richmond community, again, related to poverty, you have poor health outcomes. And so we saw a lot of family members of our students die during the pandemic, which, of course, has impacts for years to come.
Right.
I mean, second, even though I was, of course, aware of the level of gun violence that had existed, and I experienced that in D.C., you know, I've been to a lot of funerals of kids. You know, over 50 kids have died from gun violence since I've been superintendent. RPS students.
Oh my God.
And probably 2-3 times that number have been shot. And that, fortunately, it has been, knock on wood, a little bit better this year, but still, that's just horrific.
It is horrific.
It's
staggering.
Should just not be. And so while I knew about it, while I had experienced the impacts of that in D.C., I'm much closer to it in a way now.
Yeah.
And just seeing the impact not just on kids, of course, their families, but also on teachers.
Sure.
Right, who lose kids, and then, you know, you lose a kid on Friday, and then you got to be back there on Monday, and they're not in the class.
And their classmates are crying.
That's right.
And they're, yeah.
Which is why we have a whole crisis support team that comes in and provides support for kids and for the staff and for everybody. Again, back to some of the differences between us and other places. And then
50,
yeah.
I'm sorry, just like 50 children,
Yes.
RPS students.
More than 50.
50 have been killed in the time that you've been superintendent?
Yes.
That is it's just stunning number to me. Mostly high school?
Mostly, but not all. Some middle school and even some elementary school.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that has to weigh heavy.
It does. I mean,
It's not that you're responsible for
No,
every
but-
single student, but it is.
I mean, look, I'm a father. I have
Yeah.
2 boys. You know, seeing a 9-year-old in a coffin is a very hard thing. And yeah, that's it weighs on you. And what is so frustrating is it has become almost normalized. Right? The fact that I actually don't know the precise number is a pretty shocking
Indicative
thing
thing, yeah.
in and of itself, right? You would hope it's like, oh gosh, yes, and all that time we had 2. Obviously, of course, you'd want 0, but you'd remember
Right.
2.
Right.
We're well above 50.
Oh, that's so sad. And so, I mean, how do you solve that problem?
Look, I wish I could solve every challenge that our students have, but I do think that does get to a lot of bigger macro factors. I've been very public, will continue to be, about the need for common sense gun reform. The availability of guns in the Commonwealth, to me, is just doesn't make any sense. And you combine that with inadequate mental health system, you end up with
The recipe.
a lot of things that escalate and get solved with guns.
Your goals, I mean, I know you've been here 8 years. Was it always your goal to be a superintendent?
It was not, but you know, I was a teacher for a while and loved being a teacher, and then you know, had an opportunity to make a bigger impact in D.C. by taking on some administrative roles. And as the opportunity to kind of broaden impact came up, I've wrestled at every step of the way, but have typically taken the leap. And you know, it's been a very challenging but really rewarding journey. And so yeah, I love the job.
What's next?
I don't know. What's next is we have school tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we're going to focus on that.
Which is great. We'll take a 50-degree day all day. What I guess I'm asking is, do you see yourself as a superintendent for the rest of your career, or could you
I don't know.
shift into something else?
Could be. I mean,
Would you want to do state level things?
Like, I'm open to any opportunity that can help continue to broaden the impact for kids. But at least for the next few years, I know I'm here and I'm committed, and I think we're just on the beginning of the upswing, and I want to make sure that we keep pushing forward. So have no plans of going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be, curious to see the coming months and years for you, and I am so glad that you were able to come and join us and talk about all of this.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Happy to come back anytime.
Oh, it's such a fascinating look inside. It's something that I don't think, we often have time to get deep on. So, Superintendent, thank you very much, and I hope you'll come back and see us again on Untold.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Untold is a production of WTVR CBS 6. Executive produced by Mike Bergazzi and Catie Beck, directed by Nick Maharaj and Brock Taylor, and edited by April Harshman. Follow the show on Instagram at Untold_WTVR.